welcome to Aspen Ignites. You've created a checklist for parents on how to build an athlete for life.
Mhm.
Why is this important? And what can parents of babies and toddlers do?
Yeah. It's important because when you have a child, your favorite athlete is no longer Steph Curry or Tom Brady or pick the famous athlete. It becomes the athlete who's down the hallway. It's the kid in the room who you're invested in emotionally, financially, in every part of your life. That's the child you talk about or that's the athlete you talk about at cocktail parties. And so parents are deeply invested in their children and they believe that sport can be useful in their human development, and just living a great life, creating a foundation for a great life. But parents don't know where to start. They don't know the questions to ask themselves, their child, or their local sport provider. And so we created these Project Play parent checklists, uh, 10 simple questions to help them navigate that process and develop an experience for kids that's going to meet their needs, and ultimately set them up for success for life.
And it's also divided by ages. So can a baby be an athlete?
You know what? We like to say that anyone with a body is an athlete, right? It's not just elite athletes or older athletes, adult athletes. It's really anybody who we're born to move. We come out of the womb, and this is our job to learn motor skills and move through life. It's how we begin to solve problems, and make connections with other people in the physical environment around us. So yeah, I guess a baby can be an athlete,
Well,
but
they can start moving at a very young age, and you put little toys that they can reach towards as they get bigger. And we know that being an athlete or doing sports of any kind is great for physical, emotional, social development. What happens when your kid gets bigger and they gravitate towards screen time and being indoors? How should parents shift their thinking?
well, I mean, their parents complain a lot about video games and screen time diversions and otherwise. And what I try to encourage them to do is think about why are those options so intriguing, and how do we create sport environments that begin to replicate that, or at least can learn from those environments, right? So when a kid is playing video games, for instance, what's happening? There's lots of action. There's lots of access to the action. There's plenty of room for experimentation. You can start and stop when you want. You have a social experience often, whether you're on the
Mhm.
headsets or you're sitting next to another person. And when you mess up, nobody screams at you, so there's plenty of room for error.
You
So
just scream at yourself, right? If
yeah,
they're messing up.
right. Yeah. I mean, you move on.
Yeah.
If you let kids sort of own their environment a bit more and create, child-directed sport experiences, then it's going to lead to a lot of stickiness, the type of stickiness we see with screen time devices.
So we also know that kids aren't getting enough exercise at school. Recess has been on the decline for years, and homework loads are getting bigger every day. So kids don't have the time after school either. And on top of that, for many parents, getting kids to practice and games becomes difficult if they're working outside the home. How can parents manage their kids' sports schedule without sacrificing their usual routine?
Well, it really starts with asking the child what they want out of an experience, right? Um, and then designing from there. And if you do that, then you can begin to make decisions about whether you really want to sign up for that travel team that includes high doses of practices and games that are two counties or two states away, and at what age. And you just work from there. I think with school, it's important for parents to know that kids who are physically active, their brains work better. Um, Now we need to protect kids from concussions and head injuries, but like some of my best ideas are out when I'm running, when I'm just physically active and free. So it's important for parents to understand how you really want to build a whole child and not just a kid who can grind on, you know, on grades. If you talk to employers, they often want the more well-rounded person. They'll specifically recruit athletes from college because they know that they know how to work within teams. They've got soft skills that are valuable. They can problem solve. They're resilient. They have the kind of skills that are really valuable um, in sales roles and even in technical roles. People want people to know how to work together in teams. And if a kid is just at their computer, at their laptop, working on school all the time, um, it, it's limiting their potential. So I would encourage parents to kind of think about the big picture. How do you develop a well-rounded child um, that can solve problems in a variety of settings?
Yes, we should think about our children holistically. And you actually call this physical literacy. Is this something that you came up with?
No, I would love to have come up with that idea. I mean, we did a good bit of work about 10 years ago conceptualizing what physical literacy is. Some people would call it all around athleticism. We think of it as like the confidence, desire, and ability to be active for life. So, does a child know how to move their body in multiple environments? On sand, on grass, on ice, in the water, or otherwise. Because if you have those, that basic physical literacy, you have an entry point into an array of sports. But if you don't ever really learn how to run or, jump or skip, hand-eye coordination, you really have a limited set of options. So physical literacy it's a great foundation. And our argument is that parents should really think about that. And our whole sports system should think about how to build children who are physically literate. Because if you do that, then whether the child decides they want to go on and compete in the Olympics or just play for the high school team or even just, play for the company softball team when they're 25 years old, they have the foundation to do it.
Uh, what are some of the challenges that youth sports face today? You talk about all the benefits of playing a sport and being athletic, but what are some of the challenges?
So the challenges, and I really feel bad for parents today. They love the heck out of their kids, but they're presented with a situation where kids are in uniform at earlier and earlier ages. And then these travel teams are introduced in second, sometimes even first grade, where we begin to sort the weak from the strong
Hmm.
well before kids grow into their bodies, their minds, and their interests. Sport can get very expensive very quickly. All of a sudden, you're stroking checks for 2,000, 5,000, $10,000 a year, and parents feel like they have to just go with it. That there's no other option. There's no B option to keep their child physically active and around other kids and problem solving in a local, low cost environment. So we really need to bring back what we call in town recreation leagues, local community based play, options that are down the street that kids can ride their bike to, um, that don't require 10 or 11 months of training a year. There just needs to be a reset. And I would encourage parents to think about, like, at the end of the day, what do they want their child to get out of sports? Is it really a professional sports opportunity or a college playing opportunity? It's sometimes that, but it's usually not. It's usually they want their child to be connected to other kids. They want them to develop healthy habits for life. Um, they see the social benefits. So start there in the design from that set of ideas, and that means you may not need to sign up for that ten or $15,000 a year travel team. There might be a more local, low cost option, or you can band together with other parents to maybe create it. Talk to your park and rec. Say, hey, listen, we really want to kind of bring a more low cost option to our
Now,
town.
you said that parents should think about what they want their child to get out of sports, and many times it kind of runs away from them, right? There's an emphasis on performance versus participation
Yeah.
because some parents see it as giving their kids a leg up in when it comes to college admissions. So how can parents reel that back and be more supportive than overbearing?
Yeah. So parents are right in that the environment has shifted dramatically over the past 30 or 40 years. There is more scholarship money in the pool right now, and parents see that and they know how expensive colleges, and they think, ooh, well, if I load my kids up with high doses of a sport at age 8 and 10 years old, then maybe they can get scouted and get access to some of that money. It's still a bit of a mirage. It's not often real money. There are very few full scholarships out there. They also sometimes see the ability to get into a selective school because they'll be a recruited athlete. My son was a recruited athlete, went to Babson College, got into Babson because he was a good student, but he was a soccer player. And the soccer coach said, hey, I'd like Cole Farrey on my team, and he got him in. So those are real carrots that are sort of like thrown in, chum that's thrown into the pool of youth sports right now, and it's making the parents a little bit crazy. But what's important to keep in mind is your child doesn't necessarily need that to succeed in life. I have two other kids. Neither of them came in through a scholarship or a preferential admission. They're doing fine. It's, sports is not necessarily always the pathway to career success or a well balanced life. So just keep it in perspective.
Keep it in check.
Keep it in check.
And when we think about challenges that sports bring to families, talk a little bit about injuries and how we can protect our kids from sports injuries, because I think that's a genuine worry for parents.
And it's a legitimate worry. We have an issue with concussions. Um, we've made real progress over the past 10 or so years because of great awareness around head injuries. We are seeing better policies being put in place, but more needs to be done. We are now seeing a real epidemic of knee injuries. ACL injuries are up dramatically according to our research. We created something called the National ACL Injury Coalition to bring down knee injuries in the high school population because it's really getting out of control. Coaches don't know what to do in terms of injury prevention. 50 to 80% of knee injuries could be eliminated, could be prevented with just proper warm-ups, neuromuscular training. But coaches don't do that. And parents don't know to ask coaches, hey, what type of injury prevention, skills and practices are you going to put in place?
So
Um,
are they not trained for this? Are they not trained to know all the practices that they should have?
they're not trained. We have a nation of anywhere from 7 to 10 million youth coaches out there. Um, the vast majority are not trained in key competencies of working with youth. So injury prevention, simple stuff like CPR and first
Mm.
aid, sports-specific skills, how to effectively communicate with a child, abuse prevention training. Um, it's just not required in a lot of places. And it's sort of fascinating because we put teachers with children and we ask them to be trained in key competencies. And yes, they're paid a salary. That's the fundamental challenge. Most of the youth sport environment are volunteers, well meaning people
Mm.
winging it. But we've got to move to an environment where coaches are trained in the key competencies and working with kids, and parents know what to ask for. We'd like to create that kind of culture where, parents say, okay, if my child is between the ages of 6 and 10, and they're playing soccer, these are the 5 things I should be able to ask my local program. Are
Are-
your coaches trained in these
Okay.
things?
Are there like three standard questions that we should ask no matter the sport?
Are your coaches have they been subject to background checks, criminal background checks? Um, what are you doing in terms of injury prevention? And do you allow multi-sport play? A lot of the problems we have, particularly related to injuries, is because these seasons get longer and longer, and these kids' bodies are just breaking down.
Mm.
So you want your child to be involved in a program that recognizes the value of a child being able to play not just that sport, but 2, 3 activities over the course of the year, and has room for family activities. You know,
Should a parent talk to their pediatrician ahead of signing their child up for a sport? Is that just one measure they can take?
they should talk to their pediatrician. The American Academy of Pediatrics has guidance on youth sports, but you have to ask your pediatrician. They're often not proactively saying to the parents, hey, what sports are you doing? Oh, and hey, let me connect you with programs in the community that I know are of quality and could be of interest to your child. Um, it'd be great to have that kind of environment where every checkup includes some kind of, you know, guidance on how to connect children to local programs that would be useful. But until then, parents have to be proactive.
I've never had that conversation with my pediatrician, and my daughters do sports, so it's a tip I'll take home. So you talked a lot about the price of sports and how people, parents and caregivers are just signing those checks
Mhm.
and they get higher and higher. I always think about children in poorer communities.
Mhm.
And you talked a little bit about what communities can do, but what else can we do to address that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because when we talk about youth sports in America, they're really two Americas. They're the kids in the suburbs who, and I'm overgeneralizing here, who generally have pretty good access to sports. The park and recs are viable. There's a lot of programs. They're not perfect. The coaches still not always trained in the stuff they need to be trained in. But then you go into a lot of urban environments, rural environments, Native American communities, and the participation rate is half what it is in the suburbs. And that's because they just simply don't have the local infrastructure, the park and recs, and they don't have the coaches and the programs. So it's a big challenge. And this is it's nothing that parents alone can solve. This is, we need policy interventions. We need, as a nation, to say that we want every child, regardless of background or ability, to have the opportunity to develop as a human being and as an athlete through sports and begin to design from there. But in the meantime, parents in those communities, they can still be good advocates for their kids. They can really just do some research on local programs. You should also think about programs that are maybe a little bit less obvious. There might be a fencing club that is 2 miles away, or a rowing club, or some of these second tier clubs. You might have scholarships for your child. So I would encourage your child, to try a variety of sports. Be a little bit proactive about finding, environments in your community, programs in your community that might be able to work with you, and you know, try it out. See if your kid enjoys it.
Well, it's worth the effort, right? To do the research, expose your kids to different sports, see what takes. Maybe they don't know about something that exists that they would really like to do.
Hmm.
But as long as we're raising physically active kids, we got to do whatever it takes,
No, it's so important. We want happy, healthy kids.
for sure.
And I honestly think it's just so hard to do if your kid is not out in a physical environment, ideally with other kids, developing the social and emotional skills that are going to create a great foundation for life.
Well, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Grace.